Hello, I am Peter Okwoche. Welcome to Focus on Africa. Our top stories. 4 months ago, this mound of mining waste in Zambia claimed 11 lives. We have a special report from the Black Mountain and hear from some of the families affected.
Those young men left home that morning saying, "Mom, I have gone." And I said, "Okay." To this day, my son has not returned.
We speak to a key critic of Rwanda's government. Days after her release on bail from detention, she says her fight for freedom will continue. The 6th appointment in 4 years. South Africa has another new finance minister, Tito Mboweni, the former governor of the central bank. Also on the program, getting into the fighting spirit. How Dambe, a form of West African boxing that's generations old, is getting a new lease of life.
Once a Dambe boxer enters the ring, he is not sure he would come out safely.
And in sport, a first for Africa. Reactions in Senegal as they are named hosts for the 2022 Youth Olympics. Thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. This is Zambia's so-called Black Mountain. It's a slag heap and is an economic lifeline in the region. Technically, it's a mining waste, but it still contains valuable minerals, and for years people have risked their lives on its treacherous slopes to dig out what they can. In June, the site was closed after 11 subsistence miners died. Now, new safety plans have been approved, and the government has given the go-ahead for work to resume. In a special investigation, my colleague Lukwesa Burak has been to find out what's changed and to hear from those affected by the tragedy.
Black Mountain in Kitwe, a looming cliff of mining waste worth a fortune, lies silent, the scene of a tragedy that rocked Zambia earlier this year. 11 men died when rubble tunnels they were mining collapsed. There was widespread outcry, not helped by the Minister of Mines, labelling those who died as criminals. The warning signs were there, but were dismissed by the government. Months on, and families struggle to come to terms with their loss. Beatrice is mourning her son, Makina.
Those young men left home that morning saying, "Mom, I have gone." And I said, "Okay." To this day, my son has not returned.
And it's the lack of jobs and valuable minerals that lie within its menacing walls that is a huge draw for these young men. Copper, cobalt, and even gold are all remined here. We were given exclusive access to the site. The men are trying to dig as deep as they can because it's there in the heart of Black Mountain where the older deposits lay. And because they're older, they're richer. And because mining activities were less efficient, so you have a higher percentage of minerals. The deeper you get, the more wealth you come out with. The economic benefits go beyond immediate families, trickling into the wider community. An attractive risk for the miner and guilty reflection for those left behind.
Sometimes you will tell that child, "Just stay at home." But sometimes when you look at the extent of your problems, you tell yourself that maybe if the child goes out to look for work or look for money, maybe that would help you.
Vincent was lucky. Help came when he was caught up in the disaster. His patchy memories haunt him.
I heard someone shout, "There is some rocks falling from the top." That's when I started running, and I thought I was alone there. When I started running, my left leg remained behind. That's how I fell. Up until now, my body still pains, even though I managed to walk.
Blame is much debated. The government line appears to point to poor management of the site and disputes over the legal status of the miners, known locally as Jereboos.
Unfortunately, I think in terms of the way the operation was being conducted, the operation on the ground was rather split. Some of the mine operators from within the consortium felt that they needed to have an opportunity to let some community members access some of the materials. It was a little difficult, even for the owners of the asset, to control those large numbers.
Security is high on the windswept but eerily quiet site. Kelvin Tembo runs the Chipamo Mining Company, a conglomerate set up following a government decision designating 10% of the site to the local community. The remaining 90% is owned by a Chinese company. New safety measures were demanded, including reducing its height.
So we're bringing it down to not more than 2 meters. We're fencing off the area. We're having CCTVs. If there's a risky area, a red flag area, one will be able to buzz or raise someone on the radio just to make sure that no one goes in that area. Yes.
Black Mountain, like all mining activities in Zambia, especially in the copper belt, is highly politicized. Peter Sinkamba, an international mining consultant and leader of the Green Party, argues politics and a poor safety record meant disaster was inevitable.
We ended up having a situation where mining is allowed without regard to safety and mining regulations. The Black Mountain was used as a campaign to woo youths on the copper belt, to call any youth as an illegal miner. I think that is an insult to the youths of the copper belt who voted for PF on account of that Black Mountain issue.
For some, this has all come too late. But for those soon to return to Black Mountain, the hope is it'll be a safer place to work. Lukwesa Burak, BBC News, Kitwe, Zambia.
Diane Rwigara is a Rwandan opposition politician and vocal critic of President Paul Kagame. She was arrested last year and has been in detention for 13 months, charged with incitement and forgery. Last week, she was released on bail and placed under house arrest. I spoke to her on a rather poor Skype line to Kigali today and began by asking her what she makes of the charges against her.
Those are made-up charges. Like I said before I went to prison, whoever dares to speak up in this country ends up being charged with those made-up charges you just talked about. We live in a country where we are not allowed to have an opinion, and when you do have an opinion, you get punished for it.
So you say that people who try to criticize the government of President Kagame are shut up, or in your case, detained, but some would argue that just last month, over 2,000 prisoners, some of them political prisoners, were released from prison.
Yes, out of the 2,000, only 2 were political prisoners. There are still many political prisoners still inside the prison. So there are many more who should be released. Besides, the situation in the country has not changed.
Your case comes up again in court next month. Are you worried about having a fair trial? Do you believe you will have a fair trial in Rwandan courts?
I don't know. We'll see. It will depend on. It will depend on the president what he decides, because he's the one making the decision.
Well, there are those who will say that it's actually the courts, that this case is in the courts, so it's the courts that are trying it. But let's look at your presidential ambition going forward now. You know, has your spirit been broken by this, or do you still harbor presidential ambitions?
Well, before I went to prison, we had started a movement, the People's Salvation Movement. Itabaza, that's the name. I'm continuing with it. It won't be easy, has not been easy. Many Rwandans are not happy with the system. They're not happy with the way things are now. We need change. They do not dare to speak up because of the way things are now in Rwanda, but many people need change.
Rwanda's opposition politician Diane Rwigara. Now, the revolving doors of South Africa's finance ministry have claimed another minister, Nhlanhla Nene, has resigned and a new minister, Tito Mboweni, has been sworn in. The South African President, Cyril Ramaphosa, says he's accepted Mr. Nene's resignation in the interest of good governance. Mr. Nene admitted to an official inquiry last week that he had held private meetings with members of the Gupta family who've been accused of large-scale corruption during the presidency of President Jacob Zuma. Let's speak to our Southern African correspondent, Nomsa Maseko, now. Nomsa, why has Mr. Nene resigned?
Well, Mr. Nene resigned because he admitted when he was giving testimony at a Judicial Commission of Inquiry last week that he had met with the embattled Gupta brothers who are friends with the former President Jacob Zuma, and those brothers made very lucrative deals. They were given lucrative deals from the government during President Jacob Zuma's tenure as when he was still president. Now, the reason why he has resigned is because he admitted that he met with the Gupta brothers 6 times, and he later then apologized to the country and said that he acknowledges that the visits he made to the Gupta home has cast a shadow on him as a public office bearer.
And what do we know about the new minister, Mr. Mboweni?
Well, Mr. Tito Mboweni is he was the former governor of the central bank, the first black governor of the central bank. He was also the first Labour minister who was appointed during Nelson Mandela's cabinet. He was 35 years old at the time of his appointment back then. He's 59 years old now. He was also part of a panel of experts who were chosen by President Paul Kagame's reform program in the African Union earlier this year. So he is a well-respected pair of hands.
Nomsa Maseko speaking to us there live from Johannesburg. Thank you very much. Let's take a quick look now at other stories making the headlines across Africa and the rest of the world. The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, has resigned. President Trump has accepted her resignation. Ms. Haley has been in the high-profile UN role since President Trump's inauguration in 2017. No reason was given for her decision. Kenya's public prosecutor has confirmed that TV journalist Jackie Maribe and her fiancé Joseph Irungu will be charged with the murder of a woman in Nairobi last month. Ms. Maribe, a news anchor with local station Citizen Television, is expected to enter a plea next Monday after a mental health evaluation. The body of Monica Kimani was discovered in a bathtub last month. Now, the fight against malaria in Africa is something that we have focused on many times. Prevention, we know, is key, and also minimizing exposure. Areas that are often vulnerable are remote rural communities with little access to healthcare, and also border areas, those fluid crossing points between countries. Now, 4 countries, all sharing borders, are trying out a new scheme. Angola, Zambia, Zimbabwe and Namibia are joining forces to fight malaria in remote areas and hard-to-reach rural areas. The plan is to reach people and test them at border posts. Over 400 local volunteers have been trained to help in the scheme. They collect mobile phone data to identify malaria hotspots and then hand out treatment to anyone found positive. And local Anglican priests have also got involved. They will use their sermons to reinforce the importance of preventative methods such as mosquito nets and anti-malarial drugs. Well, the Right Reverend Cleophas Lunga, the Anglican Bishop of Matabeleland in Zimbabwe, joins me now. Explain the scheme to us a little bit more, Bishop. Why are you concentrating on these border areas?
The border areas is where malaria is prevalent, and this is where there's a lot of traffic, people crossing either from Zimbabwe or to Zambia, or from Zambia to Zimbabwe. And any infected person can easily transmit malaria, and one person can, within a few minutes, transmit malaria to many, many people.
So how do you detect these malaria parasites inside people using mobile phone data?
We have trained volunteers who how to educate people about malaria, but also to test. Not only test, but even further to treat and also to track. And all that is done within the guidelines of the World Health Organization within the structure of our government.
So you're now operating in 4 countries, of course, all bordering countries. Is this a scheme you hope to expand to the rest of the continent or to the rest of the malaria-ridden areas on the continent?
It will be wise for us to really go further and see to it that all our neighboring countries, as many as they can be, we work together, and we have what is called Elimination 8, which is all 8 countries around the region forging ahead to fight against malaria.
You know, the primary, mission of the church, of your primary mission is to save souls. Why are you now going into the business of curing malaria and saving lives?
We save lives, and the role of religious leaders is very key in saving lives, because the church has an asset, and the special asset for the church is actually trust itself. People trust the church, and the church reaches people in their remote areas, and it is the church that has that power to reinforce interdependency between the healthy public leaders as well as the community leaders, and we become opinion leaders, and people do trust and listen to religious leaders. Hence, we think it's important to make our contribution so that the work of scientists and our government becomes easier.
Bishop Lunga, thank you very much for coming on our program. As somebody who just recovered from malaria like 3 weeks ago, I'm really glad about this initiative. Thank you very much.
Peter, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News with me, Peter Okwoche. Still to come, recently elected for a 2nd term. Mimi speaks to the president of the Nigerian Football Federation. I'm Peter Okwoche. The top stories this hour. 4 months after this mound of mining waste in Zambia claimed 11 lives, new safety plans have now been approved and the government has given the go-ahead for work to resume. The 6th appointment in 4 years. South Africa has another new finance minister, Tito Mboweni. Now, there's no knockout in this one. A generation-old West African traditional form of boxing known as Dambe is enjoying a revival. Unlike regular boxing, in Dambe, a fighter wraps a cord made from fiber around his punching arm while he uses the other for defense. With Dambe once again finding its place in the ring, some see the potential to go global. The BBC's Ishaq Khalid reports from Abuja.
A show of bravery, courage and strength. In the Dambe form of boxing, a match consists of 3 rounds of clashes between 2 boxers. A fighter that is able to knock down his opponent emerges the winner. Traditionally, Dambe is performed in Hausa communities of West Africa to celebrate harvest of farm produce. However, it has now become an all-year-round sport with a growing popularity and generating an income for young people, like 28-year-old Abubakar Metokwasara. He has been in the game for 14 years, having learned the art and skills from his father and grandfather.
Although I have no fixed income, I can still make between 200,000 naira and 800,000 naira a month, which is the equivalent of between 550 and over 2,000 US dollars a month.
Our aspiration is for Dambe to become a global game where it can be considered as an Olympic sport.
Despite the excited cheers from fans, Dambe has a darker side. It involves a lot of risks, and sometimes the boxers get seriously injured.
Once a Dambe boxer enters the ring, he is not sure he would come out safely. There were occasions when I injured my opponents. One of them even died subsequently. And sometimes I get injured too.
Some say that for Dambe to gain international acclaim, there is a need for stronger official backing and better safety measures. Many believe there are a lot of potential in Dambe boxing, but keeping its traditional essence and at the same time appealing to the global audience might be a big task. Ishaq Khalid, BBC News, Abuja.
can tell you I've watched some of those fights before. Those guys are fighting fit. See what I've done there? You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. It's now time for some sports. Do better than that, Mimi.
Peter. Now, as we mentioned yesterday, the International Olympic Committee named Senegal as the host for the 2022 Youth Olympics. It will be the first African nation to host the tournament. The other African countries in the running were Botswana, Nigeria, and Tunisia. Senegal's President Macky Sall was thrilled with the hosting rights.
And Senegal is very honored and will consider that is a tour of Africa. So we will work with all Africans together to give a great opportunity for all the youth around the world to be very, very nice in Africa in 2022.
And people in Dakar have also been reacting to the news.
It will boost the economy. I think we can take up this challenge thanks to our new infrastructure and equipment.
It is great pride. I believe Senegal will take up this challenge and it will show to the world that it's a major country.
And to football, where Sierra Leone's game away against Ghana in the Africa Cup of Nations qualifier on Thursday, which is meant to be taking place, remains to be seen. FIFA has declined to lift their suspension until the FA President Aisha Johansson and General Secretary Chris Kamara are reinstated. A deadline of 1700 GMT today has now passed. Let's move on. And finally, I recently caught up with the president of the Nigerian Football Federation, Amaju Pinnick, who just a few weeks ago was elected for a historic second spell in office. We began by speaking about the challenges he faced in his first term.
Nobody can hold Nigerian football ransom, not anymore. We are not going to accept it. It kills our dream of attracting the corporates within and outside Nigeria.
The next 4 years, what do you expect?
We're going to initiate a process whereby we'll try and make football an integral part of Nigerian economy. First, we'll look at the various clubs, working with the league, which they started already, in trying to make sure that the various clubs in the country, especially the clubs in the Premier League, have some level of independence from the various state governments.
You've touched upon a little bit on it, youth development. You have faced some criticism that now you've focused a lot on the Super Eagles, neglecting the women's team and as well the youth teams.
Super Falcons is the most successful team in the whole of Africa, male or female.
Exactly, but yet they waited over a year before they played a friendly.
Yeah, it's based on that we had to bring in Thomas Donabe, who indeed is one of the best female coaches in the world. We are going to take it further in ensuring that we give them the same quality, or appreciably quality, almost the same with the Super Eagles.
We've seen bribery and corruption across Africa recently. Salisu Yusuf was a coach implicated in there. He got a ban. When he serves his ban, are you going to accept him back into the fold?
Yeah, definitely. He has a contract with us for 5 years, I think. I'll check with my legal people. Punishment is not meant to be to chase you away. It's just to reprimand you and bring you back a better person.
For you personally, Mr. Pinnick, re-elected for a second term at the NFF, what about CAF? What are your ambitions there?
No, I mean, the future is the future. But at the moment, I am 100% loyal to President Ahmad. And why can't I be president of CAF? It's not impossible, but I won't do anything that will make him look ridiculous. My loyalty is total to him, and that's the truth.
Amaju Pinnick, president of the Nigerian Football Federation there. And that's all the sport, Peter.
Many thanks, Mimi. Thank you. Don't forget that you can get in touch with me and some of the team. I'm on Twitter @Okwoche. That's it from the program. From me, Peter Okwoche, and the rest of the Focus on Africa team. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow, hopefully. Goodbye.